Before we begin, please note that this video is for educational and entertainment purposes only. The content is based on publicly available court records, news reports, and trial testimonies. We respect all individuals involved and their families. Viewer discretion is advised as this case contains sensitive subject matter. What if I told you that a doctor, a man sworn to save lives, used his medical expertise not to heal, but to execute the perfect murder? What if I told you he convinced his wife to go under the knife, knowing he would use that surgery as his weapon? And what if the truth that came out was even more sinister than anyone could have imagined? This is the story of Dr. Martin MacNeill and the twisted web of lies, manipulation, and murder that destroyed an entire family. But I'm warning you now, the ending of this case will leave you absolutely stunned. Pleasant Grove, Utah, 2007. From the outside, the MacNeill family looked like they had it all. Dr. Martin MacNeill was a successful physician and attorney, respected in his community, active in his church. His wife, Michele MacNeill, was a former beauty queen who had dedicated her life to raising their 8 children. They were the picture-perfect Mormon family, the kind of people you'd want as neighbors. But behind the facade of this seemingly perfect life, something dark was brewing. Something that Michele's daughters would later say they felt, but couldn't quite identify. A wrongness in their father's behavior, an urgency, a plan being set into motion. In early 2007, Martin began pressuring Michele to get a facelift. Now, Michele was only 50 years old and didn't particularly want plastic surgery. But Martin was insistent. He pushed and pushed, telling her she needed it, that it would be good for her. And eventually, worn down by his persistence, Michele agreed. What Michele didn't know was that this decision would cost her everything. On April 3, 2007, Michele MacNeill underwent a facelift and breast augmentation. The surgery went well, and she was sent home to recover with her husband, the doctor, who assured everyone he would take excellent care of her. But Martin did something strange immediately after the surgery. He went to multiple doctors and obtained a shocking cocktail of prescription medications for Michele. We're talking about Percocet, Valium, Ambien, Phenergan, and oxycodone, a dangerous combination that would make any legitimate physician raise red flags. Michele's adult daughters, Alexis and Rachel, were immediately concerned. They noticed their mother was over-medicated, drowsy, unable to function properly. When they confronted their father, Martin became defensive, angry even. He insisted he knew what he was doing. He was a doctor, after all. The daughters had no idea they were watching their father execute a murder plot in real time. April 11th, 2007. Just 8 days after Michele's surgery. That morning, Martin sent their 6-year-old daughter Ada to check on Michele. Minutes later, Ada came running back, screaming. Michele was found unresponsive in the bathtub, with the water still running. Martin called 911, but witnesses and responders would later testify that his behavior was bizarre. He seemed more concerned with moving Michele's body and controlling the scene than with actually helping her. When the 6-year-old daughter who had found her mother tried to help with CPR, Martin yelled at her to get away. Michele MacNeill was pronounced dead at the hospital. The initial determination? Natural causes. A heart arrhythmia, possibly triggered by the medication and stress of surgery. Case closed, or so it seemed. But Michele's daughters knew something was horribly wrong. They knew their father was involved, and they wouldn't stop until they proved it. Here's where this case takes its first major twist. Just days after Michele's funeral, Martin did something that shocked the entire family. He hired a nanny to help with the children. But this wasn't just any nanny. This was Gypsy Willis, a woman Martin had met at his medical clinic. The daughters immediately suspected something was off. Gypsy seemed too comfortable in their home, too familiar with their father, and they were right to be suspicious. It turned out that Martin MacNeill had been having an affair with Gypsy Willis for months before Michele's death. In fact, Gypsy had been calling Martin throughout Michele's recovery, and phone records would later show they had been in constant contact. But here's the truly disturbing part. Martin had promised Gypsy that he would leave his wife and marry her. He had been setting up this new life while his wife was still alive, planning for a future that required Michele to be out of the picture. The daughters confronted their father about the affair, and Martin's response was chilling. He showed no remorse, no shame. Instead, he became angry that they were questioning him. Within months, Gypsy Willis had moved into the family home, sleeping in the bed Michele had died in. The daughters were horrified, but they had no proof of murder. Not yet. Alexis and Rachel MacNeill refused to let their mother's death go uninvestigated. For years, they pushed authorities to take another look at the case. They gathered evidence, documented their father's behavior, and fought against a system that had initially dismissed their concerns. Finally, in 2010, 3 years after Michele's death, the Utah County Attorney's Office agreed to reopen the investigation. When investigators took a fresh look at the evidence, red flags appeared everywhere. The excessive medications Martin had obtained, his suspicious behavior on the day of Michele's death, the affair with Gypsy Willis, the fact that Martin had pressured Michele into surgery she didn't want. Medical examiners re-examined Michele's body, and this time, the findings were different. While the medications in her system could have contributed to her death, the levels suggested she had been given more than prescribed. The circumstances pointed to something far more sinister than an accidental overdose. In 2012, 5 years after Michele's death, Martin MacNeill was finally arrested and charged with murder. The trial of Martin MacNeill began in October 2013 and would captivate the nation. The prosecution painted a picture of a man so obsessed with his mistress and so callous toward his wife that he orchestrated an elaborate murder plot. The evidence was damning. Prosecutors showed that Martin had pressured Michele into unnecessary surgery, obtained a dangerous combination of medications, been in constant contact with his mistress before and after Michele's death, showed no emotion when Michele died, moved his mistress into the family home within weeks. But Martin's daughters provided the most powerful testimony. They described years of manipulation, abuse, and their father's complete lack of remorse. They told the jury about how Martin had tried to turn the other children against them for seeking justice for their mother. The defense argued that Michele had died of natural causes and that Martin's affair, while morally wrong, didn't make him a murderer. They claimed the daughters were biased and vindictive. The jury didn't buy it. On November 9, 2013, after 11 hours of deliberation, the jury found Martin MacNeill guilty of murder and obstruction of justice. The courtroom erupted. Michele's daughters sobbed with relief. After 6 years of fighting, their mother finally had justice. Martin was sentenced to 15 years to life in prison. But the story doesn't end there. Remember, I promised you a twist that would blow your mind. Here it is. During the investigation and trial, authorities discovered something absolutely shocking about Martin MacNeill's past. This respected doctor and attorney had been living a lie his entire adult life. Martin MacNeill wasn't even his real name. He was born Wayne Garfield Watson, and he had an extensive criminal history. He had forged documents, stolen identities, and committed fraud multiple times. He had been in prison before for his crimes. Everything about his life, his education, his credentials, even his name, was built on deception. But it gets worse. In 2015, while serving his sentence for Michele's murder, Martin was convicted of another crime, sexually abusing Gypsy Willis's daughter, who had been living in his home. The daughter he had claimed to care for, he had been victimizing. On April 9, 2017, almost exactly 10 years after Michele's death, Martin MacNeill was found unresponsive in his prison cell. He was pronounced dead at a local hospital. The official cause? Natural causes? Heart failure? Some might say it was poetic justice. Others might say he got off easy, escaping decades more of imprisonment. But Michele's daughters finally had closure. The Martin MacNeill case exposes something truly terrifying. The idea that someone you trust completely, someone you've built a life with, could be capable of such calculated evil. Michele never suspected that the man she married, the father of her children, was plotting her death while she recovered from surgery. He had pushed her to get. This case reminds us that evil doesn't always look like a monster. Sometimes it wears a doctor's coat and sits across from you at the dinner table. Sometimes it sleeps beside you at night and tells you it loves you, all while planning your demise. The MacNeill daughters turned their tragedy into advocacy. working to help other families who suspect foul play in the deaths of their loved ones. Their persistence and refusal to accept the initial investigation saved countless hours of detective work and brought a murderer to justice. If this case teaches us anything, it's to trust our instincts. Michele's daughters knew something was wrong, and they never stopped fighting for the truth. What do you think about this case? Could you imagine someone you love being capable of something like this? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this deep dive into one of the most twisted true crime cases in American history, please like, subscribe, and share if you want to see more crime stories from Gigglefest. Your support helps us bring you more incredible true crime content every week. Thanks for watching, and as always, we love ya.